What's something you don't think you'll ever do again? Story 1. Get married. I lost my husband to cancer 7 years ago when he was 48 and I was 45. I can't imagine ever loving someone that much again. My grandma died 4 years ago. My grandfather is 89. He's had a companion for the last couple of years. I haven't met her, but my family really doesn't like her. I'm sure some of it is about my grandma, but apparently the GF is really odd and very awkward in social/family situations, and very into PDA. I get it for my G-Pa though. He's still pretty fit at 89 and can drive at night. Might as well have someone to watch football with. I feel that. My mom died 5 years ago and my dad, late 50s, started seeing someone last year. My impression is that it's very casual, but I still feel super conflicted about it. On one hand, I want my dad to be able to talk about it with me because we don't have a lot of other family, and I'd like to support my dad. But on the other hand, I'm still dealing with my own grief and can't help but feel jealous. It's irrational, but I guess the core of it is that I'll never have another mom. So it feels unfair that my dad might have another romantic relationship. But I'd feel so crappy if my dad ever found out I felt that way. Losing someone like that is hard. That must be heartbreaking. Story 2. Cocaine. I got asked about this from a friend not too long ago. She knew how far I went down that road. She asked if I ever got the urge. It's been like 15 years. I do. But the difference is now, it wouldn't be fun. It would be sad and only in service of an addiction. I lost a good friend a couple of years ago from this BS. A heart attack at 40. I don't want to join him. I remember doing 4 to 5 grams of that stuff over a 3-day weekend. This was about a 6-month bender of using every day in various amounts. A few years ago, and afterward, my dealer of all people, who was the one who told me to take it easy, and I think in that moment it just became clear that I had a problem. Took months of relapsing here and there to get clean. I've never experienced anything else like it, and the hold it has over you. Still get the urge, especially when I'm having a phase of depression, which is a whole other thing. I just keep reminding myself about how messed up I was mentally in the midst of it, and how much money I wasted on it to keep myself in check. The worst part is, I used to love going to festivals, but I'm afraid to now because I'm certain I'll relapse in that environment. I still get new number texts from a lot of my old dope dealers. Being that I have multiple years clean now, I always respond with that, and maybe good luck. Every single one has been congratulatory and told me to keep up the good work, etc. Really caught me off guard the first time, but it actually amazes me that I've never had someone try to push something on me after that. Good on these guys for getting clean though. Story 3. Salvia divinorum. The first time I did it was the summer of '08 in the high school parking lot. I went there to run on the track and ended up in my buddy's car smoking salvia. There were 3 cars in the parking lot, including the one I was in. Maybe 6 people in total in the lot. I hit the salvia and was instantly in the 1950s. The parking lot was packed with people, girls running around in dresses, guys rocking sweater Letterman jackets. Everything looked like an antique photo. It was mostly uneventful, but a wild experience. After I came back to reality, I thought I was good to go and immediately went to get out of the car. My head felt clear and I felt fine, but my left foot would not move. It's like it was welded to the floor of the car. Lasted maybe 30 seconds, but felt like a lifetime, and I genuinely didn't know what I was going to do. Skipped out on running, walked home, hit the bong, and tried to wrap my mind around what happened. To be honest, I would probably try it again. I took a huge rip back in 2009 of some 90x, exhaled and everything in my field of vision started spinning faster and faster from left to right. The next thing I knew, I was on a train going around the room I was in. After that, I went into a straight blackness void. My friends must have been saying my name, because in this blackness I heard super seepage a couple of times. The only thought I had was, what is super seepage? I had no idea I was a person on planet Earth. I just had thoughts. Next, I came for about 30 seconds or so, it felt like. Everyone was standing around me, laughing. I proceed into the next pitch blackness, but this time everything in my vision crinkles at the edges, like crumpling up a piece of paper. I do not recall anything during this time. At the end of the trip, I start to come back to reality holding a pillow. The stitching on the pillow is moving clockwise around it. The last sensation I have is like I could really feel my body affecting space-time. I felt as if a square grid was being pressed about my body, and every movement would move and bend the grid. grid. I still think about it to this day and have no regrets. Going into that trip not knowing what to expect was such a wild ride. It's crazy that we were able to buy that stuff in tobacco shops when I was in high school. I witnessed a friend absolutely trip balls on this stuff during our senior year of high school, which I hate to say was a blessing in disguise because I never wanted to try it afterward. My buddy took a huge bong hit of that stuff and started laughing his face off. This quickly turned into him crying like a little kid 30 seconds later. This whole episode of laughing and crying lasted about 10 minutes. We were all supposed to take a hit, but that ended our curiosity and desire real quick. He later described the trip to us, and it was so far out I don't even know if we even believed him. But the emotions he was displaying during this trip were as real as it gets, so something messed up was going on in his head. This was about 15 years ago, but I still talk to this friend today. Every once in a while, he'll still bring this night up and tell me how it still freaks him out. That sounds like the craziest drug I've ever heard of, and that's a long list. Story 4. I did the Wild Cave tour at Mammoth Cave, where it's like a 6-hour caving adventure and I'll never do it again. I didn't think I was claustrophobic, but crawling through spaces so narrow you have to lay flat on your stomach and shimmy your body with no room to even lift your head or turn around, never again. Some of the areas you crawl through are so tiny that they actually have height and chest circumference limits, so people don't get stuck. I was an extremely active caver, Mendips, Wales, Yorkshire in the UK, through my teens and 20s. Got in some fun predicaments, usually involving tunnels filled with water and getting lost. Then one day, I just didn't want to do it anymore. Fast forward to now, 30 years later, and I probably couldn't. Otter Hole, though, that's a grand adventure. It's on the banks of the tidal river Severn. You have to enter at low tide and move quickly through the endless tunnels filled with wet mud to reach a higher part of the cave. Then the tide comes in and submerges the entrance passages, so you got to explore possibly the most pristine cave in the UK until hours later when the tide goes out and the passages open up again. Needless to say, timing is everything there. Came here to say spelunking. Back when I was a Christian teenager, our youth group did a mystery trip and spent the night in a cave after crawling through it. It was so bad that I came back and wrote a personal essay that ended up winning some literary prizes at my high school. You couldn't pay me enough to do it again. Reading about it is terrifying enough. Hard pass. Story 5. For me, it was being pregnant. If it was just giving birth, I could do that again. Your body knows what's coming and it's honestly fine. I mean, it sucks, but it's fine. For me, being pregnant was 9+ months of absolute misery, and I never had it in me to do it all again. The postpartum period sucks too. It's basically a 1.5 years of misery, and I looked like hell the whole time. And I'm very vain and basically never want to look like hell. That being said, I probably would have done it again if my husband wanted another baby, but he waited until I was like 38 to suggest another. Our kid is in high school. Solidarity with hating the whole pregnancy/birth experience. I think that there's such a strong cultural myth around pregnancy that while women commiserate about the inconveniences of pregnancy, they tend to gloss over how terrible it can be for your health, besides the catastrophic consequences of giving birth, i.e. hemorrhage. I love my son more than anything, but pregnancy triggered a cascade of health issues, thyroid problems, endometriosis, and other endocrine issues that, had I known it, would cause before becoming pregnant. I'm not sure if I would have decided to have a child. Also, having your body rapidly change shape and size over a few months is objectively bizarre. The hormone surge is like going through 5 years of puberty in 9 months and then spending another year trying to recover and return to normal. Once was plenty. I can be vain too, nothing too crazy, and I'm fairly comfortable with myself, but post-pregnancy my body was hard for me. I've always been a curvier woman, but right before becoming pregnant I was the smallest and feeling the most confident I had ever felt. Post-pregnancy, and I'm the absolute biggest I've ever been. Absolutely nothing fit me except leggings, and I felt gross. The biggest thing that helped me was going back to work and slowly rebuilding myself a wardrobe I felt cute in. Also having a reason to actually get ready every day. When I was doing the stay-at-home mom thing, I hardly showered or got ready because I literally went nowhere. Moms deserve the world after going through that crap. Story 6. I hope I never try to end my life again. I woke up submersed in cold pink water in a hotel bathtub, and that startling moment was as angry as I've ever been. While cleaning, scrubbing the blood up before checking out, and just lamenting that I didn't want anything else from this world, just let me go. All I wanted was an end, and I couldn't even have that. I was enraged at life in those stark seconds, at the prospect of futility and forceful existence, mad that I kept healthy and healed too fast to stay asleep. Didn't go far enough to stay gone. I stared oblivion in the eye and we both blinked. I was about 2 hours over my checkout time, but I'd become friendly with the staff so they didn't charge me the extra day. I don't know about never trying again, but I know failing at it is a depressing, almost insulting return to reality. So 2 stars. Wouldn't recommend it. The suicide attempt, I mean, not the hotel. It was probably a solid 3. I took a knife to my wrist in the kitchen, got about 2 inches down my wrist, and my housemate came in and took the knife off of me and rang an ambulance. I can't describe the anger I felt that I couldn't just die in peace. I'm very grateful she saved my life, and grateful for all the positive experiences since then, but still, part of me is pissed off. I didn't get to just stop living and not deal with this crap anymore. Story 7. Go to a concert where I have to stand. I just went to Taylor Swift. She put on a good show, but I'm too old for that stuff. She has a 44-song set list. People around me stood up for the whole freaking 3.5 hours. I was sitting during one of her more popular songs when a drunk guy came by. He asked me if I was okay. That's when I knew I didn't belong there. I had to sit at times too because it got to be too much. The lesson I learned was one my dad has tried to teach me half my life. Don't get floor seats. You will appreciate the concert more when you're higher up. It's funny because I initially was really upset that I got nosebleeds. I was able to upgrade to floor seats the week before and was over the moon, but I left wishing I kept the nosebleeds, $800 to watch the back of people's heads. The only good thing to come out of that experience was that I took my friend as a wedding gift to her, and she had a blast. I worked security at a small venue that hosted somewhat famous acts. This was back in the early to mid 2000s, and out of all the bands and musical acts I've ever experienced, only one was good enough to make me think it was worth standing in such a cramped space. That was Ozomatli. That show was absolutely amazing. Puddle of Mud was oversold and we were cited by the fire marshal several times. Static X was pathetically empty. Il Nino was pretty good. The Strokes were alright, and I wanted to beat the crap out of Baby Bash for dumping his beers all over me and the rest of the security at the front of the stage. At least the artists are getting paid to stand. The fans pay for it. Story 8. Have friends like I used to when I was 12. Here's a little background on me. I've dealt with cancer, losing family members, long-term girlfriends, etc. You know, life. Losing my 2 best friends I knew for 40+ years probably hurt the most. The first one I met was when I was 5. We went to grade school, high school, and even college together. When his father passed, I immediately flew out to see him and do anything I could to help him through. About 4 to 5 years ago, he inherited a lot of money. The conversations always went to what new toy he just bought himself. It seemed that slowly his personality started to change. He started to indulge in plenty of drinking and drugs. 10 years ago, he looked like Ashton Kutcher. Today, he weighs 400 pounds and looks like hell. The worst part was when I was a bit shaken waiting for the results from a biopsy. He never even followed up to ask about the results. Later, when I mentioned I was having surgery the following week, he completely forgot and said, "I didn't know you had surgery." I could go on, but I think you get the idea. Sorry about rambling on. Maybe it's a sort of therapy for me. The only real friends I ever made were the ones I grew up with. I never stopped talking to them, but I was forced to move away when I was 19, and I haven't been able to move back ever since because of how expensive it is to live there now. I've met other people at work and at college, but they were all more like good acquaintances than friends to me, and the friendships were never anything more than surface level. On the rare occasion that I did try getting to know them better, I got stabbed in the back and stopped bothering. Anyway, it'll be 20 years since I met most of my main group at this point, and I can tell there's less and less interest to do things together, even online. They're either too busy with their lives, or in the case of some of them, too depressed to want to bother. I keep getting my hopes up that we can connect like we used to. Small stuff like talking late into the night and swapping BS stories, or going on trips or such, but it never happens. It hurts because I'd literally do anything for them, and I've proven it too. Helped one recover from drugs by inviting inviting her into my home, moved another across the country on my own dime, etc. But I'm at a point where I just want to move on because it feels like they'd never do the same. I've tried talking it out with some of them, but I feel like I just screw it up and push them further away. I don't know, I just feel like I'll never meet people and have a connection as I do with them again. And I wouldn't want to anyway because I love these guys and I'm tired of feeling disappointed and in a constant state of longing like this. This is getting weirdly sad. Story 9. Be a police dispatcher. I did it for 2 months. My coworkers sucked and were super annoying, but I found the job to be pretty easy up until I got a call from someone whose friend posted suicidal stuff online, and they are calling to do a welfare check. A few months before, I was that person calling, and my friend ended up killing himself. I froze, decided it was not for me. My coworkers, all being BS people, didn't help. One was super racist against Asian people. Anytime someone would have an Asian name after she got off the phone with them, she would either say, "They speak very good English," or "They don't speak the English very well." Jesus. A guy got shot and called 911 for help and died on the phone with one of my coworkers. When she was describing the call to us, she was crying and laughing when describing the guy gasping for air and playing it out for us. She also talked about all the time she drank and drove. I reported her to HR, then a couple of months later she was chosen as Dispatcher of the Year. Doctor here, the disrespectful police dispatcher comments reminded me of my first year of medical school in the 1980s, where we had to learn anatomy by dissecting human cadavers. As you might imagine, that is a pretty intense experience that we had to endure several times a week for at least 3 months. Different people had different ways of coping. One method that was common, very, very dark humor. This once came out in a really disrespectful way. Think playing catch with a head. Needless to say, the crap hit the proverbial fan, and not only did my medical school, but many med schools brought the hammer down and rewrote their rules for anatomy lab decorum. They also introduced a new way to begin the anatomy class, a moment of silence and gratitude for the people who had donated their bodies so we could become good doctors. All this to say that the existential crises / fatigue experienced by many first responders may not be adequately prevented or addressed. We all know it is hard for the EMTs and others on the first line. How often do you think about what the dispatchers have to go through? To be honest, I never thought about it until "I'm a cannibal's" comment. So the rude, disrespectful comments they overheard seem like young people coping the best way they can in a psychologically intense environment. I hope that today's dispatchers have access to mental health programs that inform them of the risks of their professions and that give them tools to cope in constructive ways. It's like every sentence just gets worse and worse. Story 10. Meth. 17 years sober. Didn't realize it had been so long. Was feeling like crap today, but that cheered me up. So glad I'm nowhere near having that life. I remember sitting on a bed somewhere, use your imagination, just praying to a god I didn't believe in to get me out of there. Had a lot of hell from that point, still to come, but that was the tipping point. I was going to leave that life if I had to go scorched earth on everything I had and everyone I knew. So I've been doing a lot of traveling in the last few years. One of the things that always keeps me grounded whenever I thought about using again is thinking back to leaving class in college or just stopping at a gas station and seeing my peers getting into their cars to go do all these fun things and enjoy their youth while all I could think about was finding my next fix. No traveling or festivals for me. How am I going to find a way to get high without anyone seeing? How am I going to take my drugs through an airport? I couldn't even if I wanted to because I was barely scraping by to find that day's fix. Spent a lot of time crying in my car during those days. It stung so freaking hard. I wanted to reach out and enjoy my youth so much, but I was trapped back then and too afraid to face the challenge of detoxing and getting clean. Thankfully, it's been around 7 years since then. Still going strong. I'm glad these guys are out of that life now. Story 11. Smoke weed. I was using it for a long time to help with my sleep disorder since it helped me to make me sleepy. And after about a year of daily use, I started to cut back, and that is when I found out weed has some wicked withdrawal symptoms. It's been about a month and I'm doing way better, back to around 95%, but I know some can go through it for up to a year. It was gnarly, and I never want to touch the stuff again, even occasionally. Good for you. I was smoking daily to help me sleep, and a therapist told me at some point that by now, it probably actually kept me awake instead of helping me sleep. I laughed at her. Years later, when I quit, I noticed she was right. Since then, I've smoked from time to time again, and it never fails to keep me up for several more hours after I'd normally fall asleep, so it can actually go both ways. It was the same for me. I noticed that I need to do those things people always told me, that back then didn't seem to help, but definitely do now. Get up early, get fresh air, do physical activities, eat healthy, no screen time before bed, etc. I think during all those weed years, my original reasons for not being able to sleep, depression, or rather what caused the depression, went away, and the weed usage actually sustained those feelings. When I kicked the habit, I felt much better. It's still crazy to me how many people will say they can quit weed at any time. It's not always that easy. Story 12. Work under a supervisor who threatens employment status as motivation. I'm at a new job, and seeing the difference is making me realize the emotional toll that's been taken from me. Some bozo constantly weighing out my livelihood like it's a game or something I'll never endure again. That kind of harassment and manipulation is subhuman. There are plenty of companies perfectly willing to accept my ethic and skill. The grass is, in fact, greener on the other side. Go find it. You're worth it. Do whatever it takes to leave these bozos holding the bag. The world will be a better place without them, and the more we get up and leave, the less of them there will be. My employer has recently been telling us that we need to close more tickets per day. I work at a help desk, or we might find ourselves collecting unemployment instead of a paycheck. Upper management has decided the ultimate indicator of productivity is the amount of tickets closed, and as far as they're concerned, nothing else matters anymore. They don't even care how many tickets you work, only how many tickets you close. The goal they set is 160 closed per month, and that's the minimum. As it turns out, the data they looked at, by their own admission, shows the most tickets any single agent has closed per month the past year is 94. They need it to be 160 to truly challenge everyone. I have been working my goddamn ass off to close tickets all July, and I am only at 96, which may be the most anyone has ever closed recently. I work 2 more days in July and might hit 105, but that's about it. 160 is, for all intents and purposes, completely, utterly impossible unless people just start closing any ticket they find, regardless of if the problem is solved or not. Some people are already doing this, by the way, to try and meet the goal. I've had to deal with at least a dozen pissed off clients because we closed their tickets without solving their issues. I had one a few days ago literally screaming at me that we cannot close her ticket without her express permission. The funny thing is, work's actual policy on ticket closures is we do not respect requests like that and close the problem when we decide it's resolved, regardless of what the client wants or thinks. The funny thing is, when I first started working there, I left a resolved ticket open because the client insisted we weren't allowed to close it, with me notifying why it was left open. A few days later, when I was checking on it, it was closed by another agent with the comment, "We close resolved issues and do not leave tickets open just because the client whines about it." Find that greener pasture. It's out there. Story 13. Acid. Did some a couple of weeks ago. First time in a few years after having done it semi-regularly for the last 30, and afterward I thought, yeah, I think I'm good at that now. The same thing happened with mushrooms back in October. Nothing bad, nothing traumatic, just a sense that I'm not really interested in doing psychedelics any longer. Me too. I came here to say this. I did psychedelics every couple of weeks for a couple of years, tried acid, mushrooms, and DMT, and it completely changed my personality for the worse. I think I'm genetically prone to mental illness because it just brought it all out of me in force. It was a nightmare. It's been about 10 years since my last trip, and I'm still not the same. Contrary to what a lot of people say, psychedelics are not for everyone, especially those with a family history of mental illness. The funny thing is, I'm the opposite. I did acid a few times in the 90s and recently started wanting to do it again. For the life of me, I cannot find it. It's like it doesn't exist anymore. I found one guy who had it and swore it was amazing, bought 2 hits, and did them only for literally nothing to happen. I waited hours expecting it to kick in, and it never did. That's actually happened to me twice, and I'm either buying regular blotter paper or acid somehow has no effect on me anymore. Dunno which. When I told him, the dude did seem genuinely shocked that nothing happened when I took it. I have recently found shrooms and DMT, and I found both of them kind of disappointing. Doesn't sound as crazy as salvia, but still pretty crazy. Story 14. Have another child. I have one, and if I knew then what I know now about myself, my mental health, and my abilities as a parent, I would not have even had one child. Don't get me wrong, I love my kid to death, but watching them go through stuff is tough, and knowing that I have caused some of their troubles freaking sucks. I've actively tried to be a better human and parent, and there are a lot of positives. We're close, they're a good kid, we're in therapy together, but man, I wish I had known more about myself. Becoming a parent was a great time to find out I may have undiagnosed ADHD, and that's coming from my psychiatrist and therapist, so I'm 98% sure it's legit. A neuropsychiatrist will answer that for sure. Certainly answers a lot of questions for me, but now I have so many for my little ones. That definitely adds to the challenge of being a parent. Story 15. Go to a football watch party at my wife's coworker's house. I've done this twice with two separate groups. Both times the TV was hilariously small, like 24 to 32 inches for a party. There weren't nearly enough chairs or couch space. Not a big deal for me, but nice for people not interested in the game. And for both parties, the game was streamed on some free international stream, a sketchy webpage that would randomly cut out or get super blurry. It was painfully obvious both groups, med students and residents, just wanted to have people over or host a party and use the game as a reason. But don't call it a watch party if you have to Google where to stream Super Bowl for free 1 minute before kickoff, because clearly it was an afterthought. That's absolutely terrible. I have a nice 65 OLED, and when I have people over to watch a game or movie, it stresses me out because I want it to be perfect. Sorry you had to endure those weird-ass people with monitors for televisions. And having a decent-sized TV is not a costly affair anymore like 20 years ago. There's no reason to have a decent screen in front of the couch you sit on every night. Okay, end of first world problem rant. Yeah, the last one was like 5 years ago, so 60-inch TVs could be easily found at big box stores for like $400 to $500. At home, I won't buy anything less than 120 Hz, specifically for sports. At a watch party or bar, I'll definitely let 60 Hz slide, but showing the game on TVs that looked like they were picked up on the side of the road was abysmal, and the streaming was probably the equivalent of 15 to 20 Hz. Absolutely ruined the game for me. It should be noted these were upper middle class med school kids renting a decent sized house in a nice suburb of Denver. I just don't understand why you would host a watch party if your entertainment setup is so bad. Still pisses me off. Most 60-inch TVs cost less than actual tickets to a major game. Story 16. Feel truly at home again. I'm 42 and my grandfather is passing away. It won't be long now. I lived in his house as a child. Throughout my life, my grandparents' home was my anchor, that one safe, familiar place. My ruinous mother and uncle are going to destroy everything that made the place wonderful, scouring all their influence from it. The last familiar place in this world for me will be gone, and I'm a confusing mix of utterly, outrageously furious and just completely defeated. In some ways, I know this is the beginning of my end, too. It sucks to be in a lousy family. It's worse than being alone. The old man wasn't a half hour out the door before they were already gathering his things up to throw away. That place barely changed since the late 80s. It's home in a way no other place can ever be for me again. Everywhere else is just a house. Homes and houses are two completely different things. That's true. Story 17. Work as a cashier. Tried it when I was 15, never again. I applied to a small store close to my home, as someone who mainly works in the back, you know, store clerk filling up the shelf type deals. Well, they didn't have a position for that, and so they called and asked if I'd be willing to try out as a cashier. I said yes, thinking how hard could it be? This was Saturday afternoon and super busy, so the worker only had a little time to fill me in on how things worked. After about 5 minutes of her pressing buttons on the register and me nodding along, understanding literally nothing, she left me alone with a huge line of customers. I started ringing them up and I accidentally typed something in wrong and had no idea what to do. I swear I almost started crying. The store owner noticed and came to my rescue. She was lovely, but that 1 hour showed me I was not fit for that kind of stress. I've been through a lot of crap, but I'd still put this close to the top of my list of worst experiences ever. Gave me a whole different kind of respect for cashiers. It's not the job of the actual register. You eventually learn that it's the customers. You'll get awesome, lovely people that will love you and make your day. Then the rest are complete a-holes that will ruin your day, your week, and your month just because they are miserable. I loved/hated being a cashier. There were little old ladies I could hug, old men wanting to take me to lunch, little kids that were so sweet, and overwhelmed moms thankful for extra help I didn't have to give. And then there were the little old ladies I wanted to punch in the face, old men I wanted to shoot, kids I wanted to lock in the safe and turn off the light, and moms that didn't care what their brats were doing I wanted to run over with a tank. Lord, I wanted to say so much to so many on my last day, but you give that sarcastic wide smile with the head tilt and say, please have the kind of day you deserve. Usually they say thank you, and it takes a minute for them to figure out what you just meant. Retail workers almost always have the craziest stories to tell. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you have a similar story to these that you would like to share with us, please leave it in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please leave us a like and make sure to subscribe. For more videos like this one right now, please stop by our channel. Thanks again, and see you next time.